So we want some recoil happening, huh? So I put together a tiny little scene here. I just put a floor and a wall, and I put a player here, some arms, with a little gun in his hand. It's pretty. That's it. Tutorial's over. Thank you for watching. Nah, just screwing with you. So anyways, what we have is a couple things. And I'll show you a few things. So in my arms, I've got my camera sitting there and my arms. So these would be arms for a machine gun, right? I could have different arms, do different things, right? They can have a few different ones of these, whatever. Deactivate them, turn on the arms you want, whatever. So these arms, I created some really crappy animations with my brilliant animation abilities, to which I can even show you those. They are as amazing as we have an idle, and if I shoot, we have a little animation, and as you can tell, a sound effect. Right? So, I put on the arms with the animator just a fire and a fire vent on the animation event itself, right? Just so I know when this happens, so I can tell the particle system to play, and I play a sound effect and I fire off an event. But we'll get into that after. So I made a hide and lock cursor. Not every frame, by the way. Don't do that. And a simple, if I push the mouse button, I store a result and I bool test. I have a small wait. I tell the animation to play that fire trigger, and I send an event to my effects, and it goes back. That's all this does. And then I have a simple character controller and just a move, to which I've actually got to change that to the arms. So there's not a whole lot of logic here. I mean, that's just some basic controller stuff, nothing special, nothing really special here either. Like I said, it's really just playing the effect. So how do we get recoil? So as you can tell, like, I've got my player object, and I made a little hierarchy of stuff. And these are just empty objects that I've renamed. And I probably put one too many in here just in case I needed it. So anyways, here I have, on this object is my mouse look. Right? So that just grants me the ability to look around, right? I can look, do whatever, and it's just, there's my player. So I almost think this confuses people. Is the player Z's facing this way? I'm not moving that, right? I'm moving this object with the mouse look, and I'm putting no limits on that, and there's no caps, right? So it's spinning, and as you can see in the editor view, it's moving, and its Z is moving. But if I click on the player doesn't move, right? Like, he's a stationary object, more or less. And that's where you use the simple move and use relative to what you're looking with. Right? So there's that. Next, we have an effects game object. So I just And I really, I could have done this all kind of in one, but I wanted to break it up a bit. So I'm just doing a bit of a random float here with just some small variables, -3 to -1, -2 to +2. I give it a little shake, not much, just itty bitty. Now this is one way, and I will we'll go that route, right? So really, all I'm doing is I'm taking this object here, and I'm going to rotate it on its x by these float values every time this effect is called in space self. And then I'm clamping the Z and the Y. So that's all that's happening there, is every time this is called, this FSM is called, this guy's going to rotate. He's going to shake and rotate up, right? And that's where, if you look on my fire, I fire to the effects to do just that. So every time I fire, we do that little rotate with a little tiny game object shake. And that's pretty much it. This just, like I said, this just comes from the animation event, and then he also sends off an event to the camera, and the camera does the raycast, converts the hit normal to a rotation. I do this so that my quad doesn't sink into the wall too far. So I turn it, I take the hit normal and I turn it into a rotation, but then I take the hit normal and I multiply it by just a little amount, right? Not much. I create my bullet hole. I store it as whole. And now I take the rotation of the hole and I put it to the quaternion, and then I take the hip position and the hit normal that is now multiplied by that little tiny bit, add them together, and I get this set, and then I'm going to put the hole at that position, just so it's just slightly over top of whatever we're hitting. So there's not really like this is just a bullet hole logic. Like, that's not a big thing of it. And if I hit play, let's expand this guy out. As you see, if I move over here and shoot, my gun moves up, right? Not very aggressively. I mean, I could probably enhance that a fair bit, right? We can go to the effects and say, you know what? I don't know about this -3 and -1. What about -7 to -3? The 2 and 3 for the sideways probably isn't too bad. But now we have, right, like he wants to climb pretty rapidly, so I have constantly have to pull that mouse down and try to keep him somewhat stable, because he just climbs. And now we have this one issue where he's not climbing anymore, and that's for this other little thing, and there's some fixes for that, but that's because this guy here, as we rotate him, when he gets to a certain point, he wants to flip over. So there's some issues there, and I don't know, there's a pile of ways to fix that. The easiest way to fix this whole thing, though, to make it super easy, is, okay, so we're hiding our cursor. We're just going to tell the command to fire, and we have our movement. Okay, simple. Over here, on the next tier down, we have mouse look 2. Well, if you want to know a nice, easy way to really do this well, let's go look for mouse look 2. And I'm going to take it and I'm going to duplicate it. Now we have mouse look 3. So if we open that up, and I know this is scary, but don't worry about it. It's not that bad. Super simple. Let's go way up to the top, somewhere in here. And let's, I don't know, say right down here, somewhere, anywhere along here. Let's do a public FSM float. Let's do recoil Y, that little guy, and let's do a public FSM float recoil X. So we just added 2 float variables. Okay. Oh, we did something where this is, oh yeah, okay. So because I duplicated it, this is called mouse look 2, and everything's like, what the hell? This doesn't make any sense. So make sure to change this name here to match mouse look 3. Now everything's happy. It's like, oh, okay, we're in a different script, right? All the logic got confused for a minute. So down here, this is where we're calling these get rotations. So what we want to do is after this happens, so see this switch? If I shrink that, I want to make sure I'm after that. Let's get recoil X dot value equals 0 and recoil Y dot value equals 0. Okay, so that's one part. Now you see how this has input get axis mouse X times this sensitivity. So what if we also plus recoil X dot value, and down under the Y, plus recoil dot Y dot value. Just like that. That's all we got to do. So let's save that. So now we have in this little game object, let's get rid of mouse look 2. Let's get mouse look 3, the recoil. So I'm going to take these to the same. So now we need variables, right? We're going to do recoil Y and recoil X. These things we don't care about, just zero them out. By all means, if you want to give them variables, I don't think it matters. It has an error, but I'm not worried about that. It's not going to hurt anything. It looks ugly, that's about it. So here we have this guy here where we're rotating, right? Well, now we can get rid of all that. Instead, we'll bring in our set FSM float, right? And we have recoil X and we have recoil Y. So now we're just going to take these little random floats and we're going to stuff them up in here. Now we have, and apparently my X and Y are backwards, so you know, that's cool. So let's just change that right down in this logic. So X and Y, yeah, see, they're backwards. So Y On the Y, we want to go that way, and the X, we can do that one. All right, let's test that. Let's make sure those negatives are good. Those might have to be positives. I don't think so. Maybe, I think they are supposed to be negatives. Now we have this crazy climbing. I'm going to pull that mouse down constantly. But now we're not actually changing the rotation of anything. We're literally just moving the mouse at a very high rate, using this recoil as kind of like an added effect to it. Right? So you're going to pull down, so it's just like player unknown kind of idea, right? And if you want to get good, you got to, you know, affect that recoil. You got to play with it. You got to use the mouse. So it has a lot of playability now. If I just let the mouse go, it's just climbs. And the bigger you make those numbers, the faster it'll climb, or the slower it'll climb. So if you have different weapons, you can have all sorts of different recoil, right? Because from here, right, we're getting these values, but we could be getting these values from, say, those arms. Maybe this arm has a min and a max Y and a min and a max X, and we pull those up and use those. We switch arms, we can use different values. So, but there we have just this. I mean, overall, it's very simple. We have lock the mouse, our fire, which fires off an event to this guy to go, and we have him for our movement. This guy is our mouse look, which now has the added bonus of recoil. The effects does the random float, the shake, and sends that recoil value up to these things. Right, and those guys zero off after they've used it. That's what we put into the code. And this guy just has the raycast. The camera's got the raycast. He gets the sound and tells the raycast to go. Right, and that, if you really want to see that, just in case you do, right, if I click on my arms, I have equip gun, idle, and fire, right? So there's my fire, right? You can see it down here now that it's playing. So I instantly, on my very first frame, I fire, and I send an event, string, fire, right? You just click that to add that. And that's it. That's all there is. And you have this really nice, like I said, it feels really nice, controls very nicely, this firing. And it might be a little aggressive right now, but not bad. So, there you go. Fancy recoils. Talk to you later.